Seventh Radio, we are back with Dr. Danny, and we have an exciting topic of the contrast between Zen training and, when you want to step on the gas pedal, and then alternate ways to what I would view as like achieving progress despite where your body is, either in a fight or flight stage, it's thriving, it's growing. There's lots of different variables and time periods that I feel like most people go through over the course of the year. And I can, from speaking from bad experience, I've always in the past, I buried my head in the sand and say, okay, cool, like that 90 minutes or so that I'm in the gym, I'm just gonna find a way to redline it. And we quickly learn as we age that that may have worked in your 20s and early 30s, but as you progress as an advanced level lifter, that doesn't always going to give you the best results. So, what I thought I would do, Danny and I looked at a post by Ross Flanagan. And if you don't know who that is, it's Flavor Gang guy. Like, if you need a discount code, it's C Edmonds. So C and then my last name for sauces and cream of rice. Let me read his post and then we can talk about it. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Perfect. All right. So what Ross said here, and by the way, just to give some people some context, he is leg pressing 9 plates and has a monstrous pump. And it says Zen mode training, a term Dominic Cardone, which is his coach, coined years ago when I had nonstop rhabdo. In short, Zen mode training aims to reduce CNS stress while training without sacrificing the quality of the workout. This style of training is really only applicable to the people that understand how to push themselves to the limit. No, it's not RIR or reps in reserve. I'm not an advocate of reps in reserve because most people normally train with so many reps in the tank anyways. Zenmone training allows you to de-stress the brain and redirect the energy into the target muscles, allowing for more recovery and less overall internal stress. For the record, that is 9 plates on each side of the leg press. So, Danny, when you saw that and like read and processed it, how did you interpret that? What are you saying there?
Yeah, it's something that I had someone who literally that is what we did with this training the
Mhm.
last 6 months, and he came on stage 16 pounds heavier than his previous show. And he
Jesus
was
Christ.
not doing anything crazy.
Right. Yeah.
He's also just turned 40.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
so I sent him that post and I was like, hey man,
Yes.
like we're not the only ones doing this. Don't feel weird. Because he was like, I feel like I should be like dying. I was like,
No.
you know how to do that. Like you've had that chapter. You
Right.
know how to run yourself into a wall. Like
Yep.
that's a skill that needs to be developed.
Yep.
But I really, really liked what Ross said, and that's something that I've done with my own training lately too. We were kind of talking about it before we got on the call here, was actually figuring out how to like, put the most onto the muscle and get the actual stimulus rather than like again like running yourself in a wall for the sake of running in a wall. And I think that Nick Walker is kind of doing the same right now. Now, obviously that's not how someone builds their size initially, right? Like you have to learn to kind of hit that wall. And so I showed you the other guy that I really respect who was like the total opposite, where it was all about like aggression and making sure you're kind of attacking the weight and not, being form police all the time. Um, but I think at a certain point, there are some layers that need to come into training. So for someone who is maybe over 30, 35, maybe has some sort of neurotoxicity from PED consumption over many years, maybe has something going on in the gut microbiome from pushing food for so many years, and gut microbiome is going to affect mental health at will. Um, and for people who have trained heavy enough that their connective tissue, which has less water as we age, needs to be able to learn to kind of re-expand rather than just being so tight all the time. Because you think about someone who's doing this like stupid heavy sets of like six on a hack squat, and they're not getting bigger, but what's happening is they're getting really, really stiff within all of like the casings that their muscles sit within. So going to the Zen mode training kind of allows all of that to open up again. And I'm actually working with one of Dom's other guys right now too. And he was like, man, Dom said he's really happy that we're doing this because he's trying to get Ross to do the same thing. So it's just interesting, but I think it's the kind of thing where if we think about like the Dunning-Kruger of training, not in terms of like intelligence, but like training effort, there are people who really have to learn to run into that wall. And there are people who have done that and need to kind of come back the other direction. And I think where people stop making progress is when they sit here in this middle ground of trying to be optimal, but train hard, but not too hard, but trying to fit too many different criteria.
the mental gymnastics of trying to balance all that is also stressful, and
Oh
people
my
don't
God.
grasp it. Which is why I think a lot of times like people really gravitated to the John Meadows Mountain Dog training is because they could buy a program and just brain off, you know? And it's like, okay, here's my what I have to execute today. It's perfectly written out. It's exactly what he expects, and there's video examples. Okay, cool. The and again, that's a sense of release for a lot of folks. And I feel like because speaking from experienced lifters, right? Like you almost get married, and I know you told me you've been guilty of this. You're married to how hard you train as your identity at some portion. And that might be only,
100%.
only your identity in the gym, like when other people see you and observe you, because like me, you feel like, I'm sure, that when people watch, you want them to be left with an impression. And that impression is that dude fucking gassed to the fucking floor, right? Because that's what I sell. Like that's what I tell people to do. And sadly, when you run into things where life isn't optimal, how can you expect to do that in your training and get great results? And the answer is you cannot. Um,
Right.
ask anyone who's prepped for a show who's like going through a divorce. Their business is failing. They have a kid with cancer. Anything that causes stress. I don't care how perfect you eat your meals, the look isn't the same. Why is that?
Hmm.
External stress affects the body in a very weird way that cannot be explained on paper. So
Uh-huh.
that it always sounds like I bang on these fucking science kids, and it's
Well,
because
they kind of need to be banged on though.
there's no nuance. They think that in a vacuum, everybody's world is perfect. And you and I both know from working with thousands of people,
People,
yeah, that not everyone's life is perfect. Not everyone has a setup like I do where they can eat 3 meals and sleep 8 hours a night and go in the gym and train with no one watching. Or they go into a gym and literally the owner says, Chris, go break everything. I don't give a fuck. Spit on the floor, like throw up in the trash can. I used to work out in a facility where if I trained like I do now, they would ask me to leave.
hmm.
That's a stress. I don't care who you are
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because you're always
yeah.
doing like this. Did they just see me set that weight down a little too hard? Like, did I grunt
Yeah.
too loud? Like, all of that is in here. And, again, to get back to the point of yes, we want to maximize our efforts and time in the gym. And on paper, is progressive overload effective? 1000%. But the problem is everyone doesn't have an optimal life. So when you
Mhm.
look at something like Ross described there as a Zen training, what that in my mind does for him and his body is it allows him to still do something that he loves, which is train, get a pump, push, but at the same time not beat his body so hard into the ground like he normally would to where he can't recover. And
Yeah.
that's the conundrum that most people have. I want to train hard, but not so much that I can't recover from it.
I have two kind of
Yep.
thoughts on that too, is
Yeah,
like
please.
that's something that we're doing with Dave right now too, because at some point, like, yeah, you can add another plate, but like if you're filling up the hack squat with plates and you're not a super heavyweight
Yes.
who's already conditioned, there's something not right about where the internal stimulus is going or lack thereof.
Correct.
And that's kind of where I would come back to. This is something that I had to kind of wrestle with this year. Why is it that I want to train so hard? Like, why is it so much a part of my identity that I'm willing to literally drag my body through the dirt and have all the lab work that basically says that, like, I'm not taking care of my body in like 6 years? Um, why is that so important to me? And I think we all have like different reasons. For me, it's because I've gone through life being told I'm small, I'm incapable, I'm never going to be able to do it. And I believed it.
Mhm.
So I needed, to pull 425 for 10 or 12 or whatever I've done to kind of prove to myself that like I could be more than what people have told me.
Yeah.
And to break my own belief system. And so in the last year, as I had to like take a ton of time off training, kind of getting to the root of those beliefs is hard. It's not pretty. But I think that a lot of times if people knew that they could feel a lot better, like, yeah, of course, we want to get strong, we want to chase weights, but like, do I need to be taking 9 plates on the squat press? Probably not. Um,
Yeah.
can I get improvement in my physique with like 5 and then run with that up
Right.
to 6 to 7 to 8? Yeah, and I
They're
mean,
not
it's
going to be
hard
better.
because it's admirable to do something that sucks, right? Like it's admirable to do something that looks really hard and makes it look like you're, doing the superhuman thing. And at the end of the day, I think every person wants to be admired and respected, not only by others, but by ourselves.
Yeah. So I relate to that so much for many reasons. And one of the things I can't remember if I told you this, maybe I have. Um, that program that I shared with you last week after our call. I don't know if you
Pretty
saw
awesome, by the way.
it. Um, one of the things that I've been doing is training legs every 10 days. And what's really interesting is like I sent it to you, I sent it to Dave, I sent it to Chris, and Chris is through 4 weeks. He starts week 5 this week, and then little Dave is 1 week behind him. And in Dave's last update to me, he said, "Man, I think this every 10-day legs is perfect." And I said, "Okay, cool. Expand on that. Why? Like, I don't want to tell you the answer. I want you to tell me what you feel." And he said, "Because I beat myself into the ground so fucking hard on legs that I cannot truly recover and grow my upper body." And I said, "Yes."
That's
And
something I've talked about with my Dave as well.
correct. And oh my word, like the amount of years I wore it as a badge of honor of every Thursday going in there and just beating the hell out of my body and thinking, this is what defines me. This is what I love. And listen, I still do love that. Like there's something really sadistic about that I enjoy. And if I'm speaking to my wife, she would say, Chris, like stop chasing that shit because you're never gonna like find football again. And like that that
Ah,
to me is
yeah.
football, right? Because that's the closest thing to returning punts and kickoffs for me is like I know you've never returned a punt, obviously, but
No, but I mean,
when a ball is 100 feet in the air and you have 11 dudes trying to take your head off, that adrenaline rush is like next level shit. Like
I can
I
imagine.
crave that. And like, that feeling is what I felt like in the middle of legs with 2 sets to go. And it's like
Hmm.
you're anxious, you're nervous, it hurts, your whole body says no, but you're like, yeah, we got this, bro. Like, shut the fuck up on this roll. And like that feeling coupled with like how many nostalgic memories I have of training legs with John and S4, I want to be back in that moment. And that's two things in my life I'll never be able to do again.
Hmm.
And that's what always felt like brought me close to them. So at my own detriment of my physique, I was willing to give that up. And finally, I was like, not anymore. I'm going to take this shit by the reins and just say, you know what? I'm going to follow what I would tell someone else. And that's, hey, like you aren't losing a bodybuilding show because of your legs. You're losing it because your back isn't as good as it needs to be and your arms aren't as thick as they need to be. So, okay, cool. So I'm gonna do it. And it's really nice to hear like Chris and Dave, who, both veteran competitors, mirror like, man, my legs are getting better and but my upper body is growing too. And
Yeah,
again, not that I'm trying to say that their upper body hasn't grown in the past, but all both of those dudes and including myself, so all three of us, like legs aren't a weakness.
right.
And if you think about like your Dave, he's not losing a show because of his legs. Like he's just not.
Mhm.
Um, but we're married to the idea of okay, well, it's Thursday or it's Saturday. Like it's time to train legs, right? Like when we have to go in
Yeah,
there, we got to hack squat so much, we got to like see black spots. We have to, all the things that we relate to as a good session. Like, okay, cool. I destroyed myself, so I can't do anything else the rest of the day. I need to eat all my food, right? Like, so I think a lot of times we allow our ego, and that's the only thing I can really figure out, right? It's like it has to be ego driven because my legs have not gotten worse in the last 6 months of doing this. They've actually gotten better. My knees feel better, my hips feel better, my back feels better, and this is like the biggest and leanest I've been at this weight. So it's like clearly it's working. Um,
yeah,
so like for me, like that's a version of this Zen mode training, right? Like And then you couple that with, I also pulled back on the volume that I was doing within the leg session. So every 10 days, not only am I training it less frequently, but it's with less volume. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's a lot of times very hard for individuals who are advanced to not want to step on the gas pedal. Um, and yeah,
I think it's hard too because neurochemically, our brain is always going to choose the thought process that is least resistance. It's gonna choose the easiest option. Like our belief system is built on that. The way that we see the world, our own biases, all of that. And that's part of where it gets hard on social media too, is like those biases that you're up against, that I'm up against. I mean, like different animals, but um people's brains will always select that. And so that comes for us with our own training as well. And I think when the brain is constantly looking for predictability
mm,
and repeatability, we kind of forget to like recalibrate what might actually constitute like a good session. And because there's this fear of like, okay, well, this is what built me. I can't stop doing this. We don't ever allow that recalibration to happen unless it's forced on us.
agreed. That actually leads into like a great conversation I had with one of my guys yesterday. He said, Chris, do you think as you age, you need less volume? And I said, yes. And I'll tell you why, because I'm better at training. I don't need
Mhm.
30 sets of back to hit it. I can do it in 12
Mhm.
or 15 or 20.
Yeah.
And that's because we can make a set, for lack of better words, I can make it more accurate, meaning I can hammer that muscle. So I need less work at it, right? Like, not saying that I always do a great job of that because I still do enjoy some volume days, but as a whole, I need less time in the gym to achieve the same level of pump in the muscle, even though now the muscle is bigger. So it's like one of those like, is it the chicken or the egg type deal? Like, do you get a pump better now because your muscle is bigger, or you're better at training, or is it all of the above? Like, because I've always felt like it's a compounding issue of like the amount of years that I've strung together eating six perfect meals and training 4 to 5 times a week. Like that compounding effect is almost like interest in a bank account, right? Like that shit builds, and you cannot fake 15 years of just hammering the right thing. And I don't know if you've ever. I think now, like based on what you've told me, now that you're back in the gym and training, you're like, Chris, I'm achieving more with less. And I'm like, hell yeah, you are.
Yeah, I mean it's like it's weird because I get into to destination where again everyone's a pro. Like being a pro out here is not special. It's really not. And I watch all the other pros training and I'm like, I've taken, the Atlanta's pendulum. We moved out here from Colorado to Texas. I was mid-prep and I've taken 5 plates on that Atlanta's pendulum for like,
Jesus,
8 to 10.
fuck, that's wild.
I know, like I'm strong, right? And now I might have like a plate or plate and a quarter on there. And like because I've gotten so much better actually putting it on my quads, I'm like, my quads are screaming, but I'm
Yep,
not getting just like crushed everywhere. So it's hard. It's weird. And I think if I'm honest, there are a lot of days where I look around and I'm like, am I working hard enough? Am I doing good enough? Like I sent you a screenshot from my session on Sunday or
right.
Saturday. And I asked like, did those look okay? Because it was hard, but it didn't feel like
Caesar.
yeah, I had one earlier. So I had one earlier, so it's fine. Um, another issue. But yeah, it's weird. And in a lot of ways, I'm like a beginner again, and it's really lighting up like my passion for training again because I can go in and actually feel good and not go in and be like, okay, in order to make progress at this thing that's important to me in bodybuilding, I have to exchange feeling like I'm beat up the rest of the day and I can't show up for my clients. My brain is tired. Like,
Right,
man, I didn't realize how much the heavy, heavy, heavy training, even for volume, like, 10. It's not like I'm doing like 3 rep maxes, but I didn't realize how much just focusing strictly on progressive overload like broke my CNS.
right. Yep,
Like we did Dutch tests after the Olympia and I had like literally zero dopamine. None.
yep.
Um, it's not a fun place to be if you're workouts.
The,
And
the scary thing to touch on this real fast before I let you continue. The scary thing to me when I hear that with progressive overload always is, it's that scoreboard game. And if you miss reps or miss weight,
Oh my
most people
gosh.
view that session as a loss. And it's like, well, what
Totally.
have you been lifting today? And
Yeah.
I know your brain has evolved enough, and so is mine, to know that that's just not a fact. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
For sure. Um, so I don't know. I think that like I don't know. And again, I work with people who I had a conversation with a guy on Saturday who is 56.
okay,
And he's like, yeah, I get on social media and I see everyone saying that I should only be doing reps of like 6 for hypertrophy. And I have another person that I worked with in the past who was so stuck in that belief system that he's one of the only people I've truly failed with. Um, Nothing to do with my skill set, everything to do with if someone's not willing to grow, then they're not willing to grow.
yeah,
Anyway, but I was talking to this guy and I kind of explained again, like just from what we know about what happens as we age,
right,
why in the world, under any circumstance, would someone who's almost 40 or older train the way you do when you're 25?
correct, yes,
It doesn't make any sense. And if
right.
you think about it, just coming back to like what you were saying about getting a pump too, like how easy was it to get a pump in your 20s? I think about myself training in my 20s, and it was like I could be in the gym for about 30 seconds and I'd feel like a freaking balloon. Even doing like powerlifting things.
That's where you and I's experience was very different.
Just kidding.
For me, my appendages were that way. My torso was not. So arms and legs, 100% can relate. Um, with chest, shoulders, back, absolutely not. I was horrible at it
Hmm.
in my 20s, probably even into my 30s, to be honest. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Definitely in my 20s. Do
It was a lot easier. I think it's just easier to connect and train, and even like
you
I
think that's
think the
because you had less
system.
injuries?
I wouldn't call them injuries. I would call it compounded changes of the body over time.
Okay. Okay.
Change in the nervous system, change in structure, change in the amount of compression going on through the trunk and torso,
Okay.
change in muscle spindle activity. I
Right.
mean, again, like I love the rib cage stuff that's popping up. I love the compression expansion model kind of getting into bodybuilding, but like we cannot forget that all of that is based on principles that we knew all along. Like we've known about muscle spindles. We've known about the fact that, muscles don't always contract uniformly throughout the entire muscle. Like we've known this, right? So the model was always based on principles. But I think that part of why it's harder to get a pump later on, rather, I should say, has more to do with the fact that the body has changed over time. And as we've added more and more and more load, it's going to change the afferent input that gets sent up to the nervous system that determines the state from which, it's like the starting point from which we're contracting the rep. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yes.
So, like your body and your nervous system now, from multiple facets, from a CNS standpoint, from the standpoint of muscle spindle activity, from the amount of range of motion availability at the joint, from connective tissue, all those things are different now than at 20.
So I'll tell you why I think that actually evolved for me, because when I was young, I didn't really have a big knowledge base. So I was always doing what I was told would work.
Hmm.
Where now I do nothing but what I know I feel and work with, right?
Mhm.
Like, so my exercise selection is way more intelligent, right? Like,
Mhm.
to give you an example, like a back day for me was like wide grip pull-ups, barbell rows, corner T-bar rows, deadlifts, wide grip pull downs, and then narrow grip seated cable row and a dumbbell row. So, like, of all of those that I do now is only dumbbell row. Like, so if you look at all that, and I did dumbbell rows at the end when I was fatigued, right? Um, so if you look at that back session, like only one thing was one arm, which you and I talked, like one arm works better for my structure, right? It feels better, it looks better. I control and connect with it. Obviously all that wide grip shit, like is just was crushing my rear delts and biceps. Weird. And then like deadlifts, since I'm was always strong on my legs, like that was all quads, hamstrings, and glutes. Like, wonder why my back was shit. So like, we're compared to now, like my exercise selection is like, oh, okay, hey, like what actually feels good to you? Okay, cool, do that really
Mhm.
hard, or to your max effort or to max effort of that day. So I feel like the evolution of my brain, like I understand how my body works better, and like as a whole, like with a mixture of everything I've learned from everybody who's ever had an impact on me. Like I've pieced that together to come up with a workout structure that makes sense logically, right?
Yeah, yeah,
With,
yeah.
I think I've told you with shoulders before, like I was doing 3 shoulder presses a session. I don't do any shoulder pressing now. So it's like I was able to evolve a lot as opposed to like the beginning. I was doing a lot of things right in terms of developing a base level of strength. And I think that's what
Hmm.
really benefited me. Um, but like no one in a chest day needs to do flat bench, incline bench, and decline bench in one session and then do the same thing with dumbbells in the same workout. So just stupid shit, right? Like I was so eager to train, I just wanted to be better, so I just did it all. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that's the answer, right? Where, looking back, if I could like whisper in my ear and be like, hey, try this, bro. Who knows how life would have worked out. But yeah, like it's really interesting how, two people experience in the gym can be very, very different. Um,
Hmm.
and I feel like probably based on everything I know about you, your intelligence was probably way higher than mine for like gym IQ when you were starting, or is that not true?
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, I loved to train because so I found training, and within a few months of like really getting into it, I was going through a divorce and I was in grad school.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
So and my family wasn't speaking to me, and it was like my entire world was falling apart.
Right,
So I
right.
didn't want to have to be smart. I just wanted to go in and destroy things.
Yeah, understand. I definitely understand that.
Um, and honestly, like when I approached training, I approached it like a hobby. I didn't think I was going to end up, I wanted to work in a neuro facility.
Oh, right.
So I was in grad school and I'm like, I'm going to go be a neuro nerd, and walked into the gym and started deadlifting and, rowing and leg pressing and was like, I guess I'm okay at this.
Yeah.
Never did I think if I had known it would have become what it is to me now, I probably would have seen it a lot differently.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I think the only thing that I really had beforehand was I had a pretty good working knowledge of some more advanced neural concepts. I took, before I started grad school, I took 3 courses from Postural Restoration Institute or PRI, which I don't want to like really align myself with because it's under a lot of like, basically what I learned about it was so much how afferent input is going to dictate not only the ability to like find good output, but is going to dictate what muscles that output is coming from. So these like neural feedback loops, like kind of lay the foundation for me. Um, but no, I was really dumb when I started training. I won't say dumb. I was disengaged from like thinking about it. I had a coach. I did what I was told, and that's what I wanted.
Oh, yeah. See, I kind of just threw myself in the weeds and just started reading everything and watching everything. And I
Hmm.
was like, okay, cool, let's just go experiment. So that's kind of, I had to like just find my way through the quicksand. And I think all through my 20s, like, and I call it quicksand because I found things that worked, but then I got derailed by things that didn't, and vice
Oh
versa.
yeah, T Nation had a way of doing that to us.
Right. And it's like the more you fought to get better, like the sink deeper into a hole I felt like. And it wasn't until like I think I hit my like early to mid 30s that I felt like I was above ground again. And I was like, oh, hell yeah,
Mm,
this is the way for me.
yeah,
At that point, God, I'd been with John probably 10 years at that point, and I was able to take in like everything he taught me and realize like, okay, these things work, these things don't work. And then to replace the things that don't work, here's what I found really is to be effective.
yeah.
And, right before he passed, like that's what him and I, a lot of our conversations were going towards is like,
Mhm.
the way he grew his back didn't work for me. Um, it just didn't. And I mean, anyone can look at his photos from the time, like 1 or 2 years before he turned pro until up until the time he retired. His back, specifically his lats, were some of his most impressive increases in muscle tissue. And that was all after the age of 40. So, like, he was on to something there for him, but that didn't work for me. Um, so again, that's just kind of a interesting side tangent of, I guess, what we always bang on
Well,
is like individual variability.
yeah, I think that's really, really valuable for anyone to hear, myself included, because it's very easy to look at people that we respect and that we want to learn from, kind of go, okay, cool. Well, this guy has like kind of similar structure. We've done well with other sessions together.
Yeah.
And I think just to kind of own that, like, needing to train differently than someone has nothing to do with like there's nothing personal about that.
No, not a bit. Right.
And I think unfortunately, because we love training the way that we do, or most of when I say we, I mean like all of us, kind of coming back to the identity of why are we so married to training the way that we are. I think for some people, there's that like parasocial relationship in some ways. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And I mean, just to give some people like some hard examples, because they always, a lot of times people say, where do you disagree with John? And I'm like, well, for the most part, our principles align. Or I wouldn't have successfully worked for him for 12 years, right? Like
Yeah.
his leg days are the number for me, clearly, right? But within that, he liked to leg press like 8 to 10 reps. And that was just too low for me. Like I prefer like 12 to 20, sometimes 30. For example, I always loved doing adductor after hamstrings. Like that was one of those things where he just kind of sprinkled in. Like I love hard hamstrings, hard adductor, and then all quad and then back to hamstring. So it's like it's pretty much his setup. I just increased the reps a little bit and then added an adductor in there, and then we're on the same page again, right? Like
Hmm.
if we're talking about arms, he loved to do biceps before triceps, and that's fucking terrible for me. Like my elbows
Yeah.
feel horrible that way. Now, listen, when we trained arms, we always did biceps first. That's what he liked. I by no means was like, oh God, arms again. No, it was like, okay, cool. Like, just get a pump, have fun. I'm blessed and fortunate to be here. Where when I'm home
Hmm.
alone, if he's writing my programming, I'm just gonna take that bicep and tricep and flip that shit. Simple as that. Um,
Hmm.
I spoke about back, like that is such a nuanced topic. We probably need a whole damn podcast to dig through that. But anyone who has watched my YouTube channel, they know how I do back. Like it's straight arm pull down to some sort of machine row, then a free weight row, then probably another free weight row, and then something for my low back. Like, and most of that's going to be one arm. Um, Again, that's just what has been pretty effective and keeping me healthy. I'm trying to think what chest and shoulders to the T. The only thing that was different is whenever he put front delt work in there, I made it rear delt work.
Ah,
Listen, yeah.
yeah.
Because honestly, when we trained together, we never did front delts. So I always just felt like he wrote those into the programs because he felt like people would want front delt work. And I'm like, listen, you told me years ago rear delts are where you're impressed, so I'm gonna have mine so fucking blown out. Yeah. So
Hmm.
yeah,
I
but
think
chest,
a couple weeks ago. Oh, go ahead.
no, finish.
No, 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 go.
And then chest, like that always worked for me. Heavy inclines, heavy barbells, and then pump and then stretch. Like that's what put thickness on my chest. And to this day I still do. So um I might sometimes just go like press to fly, but that's only because it just feels really good.
Hmm.
As of recent, but for years I followed his exact model for chest training and it worked.
Mm.
As I mean, I think of all my body parts, that and probably delts have came up the most. Um, Maybe hamstrings, but yeah. What are you gonna say about front delt work?
Oh, I think we were messaging about that a couple weeks back.
Yes. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
were like, I was, watching people do heavy swings. How about your bicep tendon? Like, are you good? And of course, the answer was no.
The answer is
I feel like you and
no.
I feel pretty similarly about that. I do think that a little bit of front delt work can be helpful for some people, but I mean, really, with pressing, you're going to get everything you need. If you can stay, if you can keep the intent where you need it.
Yeah, right. And I think I've said this to you on the podcast or maybe in person. Like, if you press heavy dumbbells and barbells or Smith machines on an incline, there's no way you're not getting front delt work. Like, I
Yeah.
don't care how hyper isolated, how slow you go. Even if I have the 50s in my hands on dumbbells, like I'm still going to feel my front delt stretch and contract if I do it properly.
Hmm.
I guess I'm always just like, I've done so much incline work to bring my upper chest up so I'm thick through the collarbone that I always just felt like shoulder pressing wasn't giving me near what I needed in terms
Yeah.
of delt development. So I'm like, if I just hammer shoulders at the end of chest, like why do I need to do anything front delt related? And my thought process, if I'm doing 315 on incline for sets of 8 to 12, a 20-pound dumbbell raise isn't doing shit for my front delt.
Yeah. No,
Maybe
no.
too
At that
logical
point, they're
there.
probably already so fatigued that it's just going to end up being all like upper arm.
Cor- Correct, right? And if you watch most people do shitty front raises, it's a lot of trap, it's a lot of arm. So let's just cut it out. Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather someone spend their time perfecting side and rear laterals so that they're on that muscle. Like, and I think you've heard me say this enough. Like, if you're bad at side and rear laterals, the only way to get good at them is practice them. Well, if you're only doing a top set and a back off, one exercise each per week, that's not a lot of practice. Um,
Mhm.
so you might have just taken those two muscles and taken you 3 years to get that skill where, hey, if we doubled the volume within a session, you could get that skill in a year. So if you think about that acquisition and time management, like that's kind of how I've thought about it.
Mhm.
Which is a lot of times, like if somebody has shitty arms, I'll let them do a little bit of cable work at the end of back, a little bit of cable work at the end of chest and shoulders, and then we have a full arm day. So it's like, we're just practicing arms early in the week and setting you up for a good arm day later in the week.
Yeah.
Or go ahead.
Even like, adults in particular, if you did one set of cable laterals, like let's say for me, I really feel line cable Y raise really well. If
Right.
I did
Yeah.
one or two sets every day, even not on my like let's say on my actual upper days,
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
gonna do more than two work sets there. But
Correct.
if I did a couple sets with light weight on every other day just to focus on actually connecting with the muscle, is that going to detract from things? Absolutely
Absolutely.
not.
Let's make it
Is it
better.
going to improve sensory motor control?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yep. It's very similar. I feel like if guys or girls have lagging lower body, I always split their leg days. And they'll be like, why did you do that? And I'm like, that's simply just brain management. Like,
Hmm.
because I want you to be able to say, okay, on day one, we're going to do quads and adductors really hard. And then we'll come back 3 or 4 days later and we're going to do glutes and hamstrings really hard. So if I eliminate two body parts per each one of those sessions, it's less for you to think about. Like
Hmm.
it's less overwhelming. And if I can take the volume from say 20 sets to 12 hard sets, that's way easier because in the grand scheme of life, I'm still doing 24 sets of legs where I'm only going to do 20 if I'm training at once. So it's like and you know how I set up double leg days where it's like you're still going to do a little bit of leg curling on your quad adductor day, and you're going to do a little bit of quad shit somehow in the form of like a split squat, a lunge on a hamstring glute day. So it's like you're getting carryover. And to me, that's about like, going back to that Zen type training. Like if you set it up right and properly, that idea of like just doing quads and adductors is way easier than saying, Danny, I need to just crush your lower body. Like and again, it goes back to Ross's post in this. If you don't know what hard training is, none of this will make sense and none of it will work.
Yeah.
Because all of your training is in.
Yes. Well, and again, like, I don't know. I think there are layers to this that we won't know how to talk about for the next few decades in terms of like how and why the CNS responds the way that it does and why, raising that strength ceiling kind of perpetuates all the other things.
Yes.
Like we know some of that, right? Like there are people who can speak very intelligently about that, but I think there's more nuance. I think there's more layers. Um, but one of the things I think you and I have in common with everyone that we coach is especially someone who's, you know, I'm going to say over 30,
Yes.
even if that's a lot younger. Um, I'm running into a lot of people who feel like at 31, they're too broken and continue training. And I'm like, well, yeah, because all you did was run yourself into a brick wall for the last 5 years. But I think that you and I very much have the same approach with a lot of people. And that was why, like, I saw that post from Ross and I was like, again, like, he's not just some, like, scrub pro. He's one of the top pros. So if he's doing this, and if we peel it back again and go to like someone like Nick Walker, and again, I could nerd out over some of what's going on with his internal pressure management and why, especially for him with some of the vascular things he's got going on, I'd be curious about some of the pressure management issues.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I had something to say there and I lost it, so we'll pretend I.
I think when you look at it all as a whole, the easiest way to maybe self-regulate this is take your best body part and try it there first. So if you're
Mhm.
resistant,
Yeah,
if you're being resistant, you're like, oh, Chris, like, I don't know if this is the right time to do this for these body parts or my whole body, right? Okay, cool. Pick your strongest body part that in your mind, if you just simply put it on maintenance, it would be okay. And try it there. And then
that's a
watch
great
how
idea.
that body part flourishes.
Hmm.
And then from that, like, everything I talk about in general, confidence comes from doing. So you see it and you build confidence in yourself. Okay, cool. That worked for my legs. Awesome. What's next? Okay. Chris, like maybe you can do that for shoulders next. Okay, cool. I'm gonna do it for legs and shoulders. All right. Somehow my delts are more capped than they've ever been. Weird. Okay, cool. Now let's transition to chest. You're getting thicker now. Awesome. Okay, so now I'm building momentum. I'm still hammering back in arms, but everything else is kind of I'm viewing on maintenance, but it's still progressing at a good clip because
Yeah.
totally looking at my body as an organism through the course of a week, month, and training cycle. Not where a lot of people I think view it as like, okay, today is Monday, it's back day. It is absolute annihilation, 10 out of 10. And then they wake up tomorrow, it's like, okay, cool, chest and shoulders, same fucking mindset. I gotta beat this
Yeah.
shit into the ground. Okay, cool, Wednesday, off day. I'm gonna sit around and stress about the training I didn't do on Monday and Tuesday and why this is miserable. Okay, cool. Now Thursday, legs. This is it. This is fucking war. And next thing you know, on Friday and Saturday, you're beat to literal shit and you're just dragging through the rest of that week. It's like, okay, Sunday. Okay, fuck, now I need a day off. This is miserable. My body is
Mhm.
broken. And then you just
We
reset.
can't go to war every single day. We can't.
No,
I like to have at least one movement, per session that I kind of just, I'm a little bit of an asshole with just because I like being strong.
no, no.
Um, but for the most part, again, like we can't just go to war every day. I mean, like, yeah, get after it, right? Like, I think someone who does this really well is Sarah Bradley,
Okay.
the
Yep.
UK Women's Physique Pro, small but mighty.
Yes.
Man, I love watching her train. Like, she is so strong. She gets after it too. But when she's done, she's done.
Right.
It's not like, you know, she might be one of my favorite pros that I watch these days. She's just phenomenal.
Yep.
Big fan.
All right. So put a finishing touch on this. Like, be intelligent with your training and your response system. And if you aren't progressing, if you're at a plateau, this would be one of the first places I'll look. Resting more and then putting your body on Zen mode training for at least your strengths and start there and see what happens. And I bet it's good. As long as you keep your eating up and your rest and recovery is still a priority, like that's probably my biggest like takeaway from this. And I always tell people like if it doesn't work, what's the worst thing that happened? You gave your body a break for 2 months and then now it can attack full speed again.
Hmm.
You literally lost nothing. You just maintained. Cool.
I want to make one qualifier too.
Yeah, please.
Sumo training does not mean easy. Like we
Right.
still need proximated failure, but there's difference between like hanging on for dear life on a leg press versus like using your quad.
There's also a
So
difference
just
in
making sure that's crystal clear. Proximity to failure, like intensity is still important, but there's a difference between internal intensity through the muscle rather than just intensity because your whole body feels like you're going to war.
I do think I want to add something to what you just said, which is perfect. Is like, you know, you can step away from a set when you just reach positive failure. You don't have to do force reps, ISO holds, and a drop set on everything. And I think sometimes that's lost in translation because they're like, I must train hard. I have to do all the intensity techniques. No, bro, just take a set to a hard 12 and walk away.
Yeah, yeah, like positive failure on 12 is plenty.
Correct, correct. So if you're out
Yeah.
there, if you're not making progress and your body feels beat to shit, this is where we would start. And until next time, Chris and Dr. Danny, we are done.